Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Stacy Richter, better known as the marketing Mindbender. Stacy's career kicked off with a Bachelor of Commerce and an MBA, leading him to success across industries like oil and gas, retail, and fintech. A serial entrepreneur, Stacy has acquired and grown small to medium-sized businesses, leveraging his philosophy of asking great questions to drive success. He's also known for his quirky hobbies and musical talents, which we are going to get into a little bit, Stacy. So first of all, welcome to the show. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on?
Thanks, Matt. And I definitely appreciate the invite to join you today. Man, one of my favorite topics to talk about is wealth, business, and money. So right up my alley, and I think we'll get along well today. I'm only afraid we're not going to have enough time. So I'll keep this intro really, really short. And as you mentioned, I've got a number of different letters through education because when I grew up, a little bit about my story in a single parent household, I was always told the traditional route is go to school, get good grades, get out of school, get a good job, work there forever, and then hopefully have enough to retire.
Yeah, maybe one of those pension things that everybody's talking about.
Exactly. The three-legged stool we've heard so much about that turned quickly into a pogo stick for me, and that's what I did, man. I did an undergraduate degree, got out of school, got a big corporate job with a Fortune 500 company. And thankfully, I didn't have to spend 20 years in that career to figure out it wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go financially, personally, with fulfillment, all of those things that we talk about as business people, entrepreneurs, and just humans in general. And, after a couple of years, I realized Fortune 500 was not going to get me where I wanted to go. So I quickly quit the job. However, I still didn't wake up to what I really wanted to do. So I went and worked for a small corporate, took a sales and marketing job with a Alberta manufacturing firm in oil and gas, like most of us good Alberta boys do, was making some good money, but realized, again, after a year or two, it was still the same problems, same limitations, just at a smaller scale, right? I was always going to butt my head against that glass ceiling. It was the owner dictating the direction of the business and not his team. And, I went to school and got another degree, right? Because I still hadn't figured it out yet. I'm still following the old paradigm, go to school, get good grades, right?
You hadn't yet been introduced to Robert Kiyosaki. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right?
Haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad yet. So I went to, got a master's degree in business, figured, okay, this is going to escalate my career. Thankfully, I did that because at the end of my degree program, one of my very last professors in the last course I took to complete my program said one thing to me. And he's like, Stacy, when you're done this program, one of two things are going to happen. He's like, one, you're definitely going to outgrow the position you're in. And two, you may even outgrow the company you're at. And I'm not kidding you. The day we finished, I realized both had just happened to me. And I drove all the way to Edmonton from Calgary. And for our international visitors today, it's about a 3-hour drive north, just so I could resign my position with my sales manager. The joke of it is it happened to be April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. I walked into his office, handed my resignation letter, said, thanks for everything, but I'm done today. If you want me to work my notice, I will. And he thought it was a joke. He's like, this is a long way to come for a joke. Let's go for lunch. And I'm like, it's not a joke, man. I'm done. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go. But I'm glad I did that because within a couple of days, a very close friend of mine heard that, I was possibly looking for something new, and he approached me. And that day we decided to start our very first marketing agency together. And like a lot of startups, it was at a kitchen table, and our very first conversation as business partners was, okay, Stacy, we have enough money in the bank account to pay both of us for about 3 months.
Yeah.
After 3 months, we probably have enough cash in the bank to pay one of us. And I can tell you it was his bank account, so it wasn't going to be me. But you know what? We never looked back, Matt. And we grew that agency from his kitchen table through organic growth and acquisition to 5 offices all around the United States and Canada. And we're working with some really high-ticket clients like Hunter Douglas and Disney. And that was my first real introduction to entrepreneurship. and never looked back. And since then, whether it was agencies, marketing agencies, digital or boutique, manufacturing companies, construction companies, finance agencies, or fintech, as you mentioned, I had always been attracted to the entrepreneurship side of what we do. And right now, that's led me to become the CEO of Live Lingua, which is an online language school where we use online immersion to teach people how to speak a second language, whether it's Spanish, German, English, French, Portuguese, all around the world. It's been a super exciting adventure for us. So that's the catch up over the last 20, 25 years.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it is funny you mentioned, you get told to go and get your education and go and work at your job, and maybe there's a pension, and those virtually don't exist anymore. But in the 90s and early 2000s, I think still some companies had those. So yeah, do that. And then, yeah, there's no passion behind it though. And you learn pretty quickly if that's not the route for you, that the last 10 years was a bit of a waste. Not that anything is a waste and not that education is a waste, but it's like, oh no, I maybe could have gone down that path a little earlier.
True.
So tell me maybe a little bit more about Live Lingua then. So it's app based, online based, like how does that?
No, so it is all with live tutors actually.
Oh, okay.
So we've gone grassroots, and quite frankly, I came across this organization a little over a year and a half ago through a different venture company, and without going into the details, we ended up acquiring the business in February. I still work with the founders, but all of our online languages are taught by live tutors through platforms like Zoom and Google Meet and Skype. And there's a really interesting origin story around the company and how that started between a couple of Peace Corps employees, Ray and Laura Blakeney, who at the time were colleagues in the U.S. Peace Corps. She was his Spanish teacher. He was a software engineer. They worked in the Peace Corps, fell in love, and next thing you know, they're in business and living together and building a great life. So I got involved a year and a half ago, took over as the CEO in April last year. Yeah. And then together with Ray and Laura, reacquired the company just this past February. And now we're in the growth and scale mode. But the platform itself is live online tutors. Yeah. Old school, right? People still love to interact with people. It's amazing how strong that relationship is. There is definitely a place for the AI and automated side of language learning as a supplement. But if you want to genuinely learn a language for your own reasons, the only way to do it is live with native speakers of language you're looking to learn.
Yeah. So you guys are almost like the connector, like I'll say maybe like a Fiverr model where you're bringing in individuals that can work on like a consulting type basis or a gig type basis.
Definitely. So we've got two types of tutors that work with us. We have full-time employees who work for us exclusively, and we also have contractors all over the world who will swoop in and take up hours where they find useful. But you're right. It's an absolute hybrid model with who we work with.
Very cool. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, obviously, you've got a diverse background. You got the marketing background as well to it, and been through that with the agency side of it, and now this, I would say, is kind of on the other side of the business area. Though marketing obviously applies to all businesses. What does your day-to-day look like now? Are you involved in other businesses? Is this solely what you're working on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the day-to-day is still pretty hectic, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I can tell you, though, going from the consulting world into the operating world has been an absolute dream, right? Kind of paint the picture of the consulting world and the agency side. And it's a lot of, I think you should do this, Mr. or Mrs. Client, and I will help you implement it. And whether they do or don't really is of no consequence on the consulting side. Of course, we hope they implement everything 100% and it all works wonderfully, but they don't always. And the trouble with that, though, Matt, is you never are really around long enough to see the real results of the work we're doing, right? And that was always one of my gripes about the agency business. As much as I've learned so much, got to work in tons of different types of businesses and amazing professionals, I never got to see the fruits of all that labor. And I've always wanted to build something of our own. So when I exited consulting business and got into acquisition, say, my number one thing is I'm going to be a part of the company. So my day to day with Live Lingua, we're very, very small, even though we've been around 14 plus years.
Hmm.
In the grand scheme of things, we're a very, very small organization. So I'm still very hip deep in the operations of what we do. I happen to be the marketing side of what we do. So I don't get into teaching. I'm, more of a student on the language side,
Yeah.
but using my marketing skills and knowledge as a professional in those areas to help grow the business so we can go have a bigger impact on the students that we work with, the teachers we get to work with, and then, of course, the investors that we attract into our business. So it is very, very much grassroots, but that's also the challenge of an entrepreneur. It is always about how do you spend the right amount of time in the business so you don't really lose touch with what you do and why you're doing it and who you do it for.
Yeah.
And then balancing that off with the time working on the business and strategic growth. So probably about half my day is spent actually marketing services and what we do to everyday people, whether retail clients or commercial clients. And then the other half is looking at larger joint ventures with other types of product partners and potential acquisitions, right? And this is a very much a growth by acquisition type business. And I think a lot of small businesses are, unless you're in the pure software data play, really the best and fastest way to grow is through acquiring other businesses doing really, really well. That's probably where I spend about half my time as well.
Okay. Okay. I'll ask you a couple more questions about Live Lingua, and then I want to kind of dive into the personal side of it as well. But maybe this is a mix between those. What languages do you know how to speak, or are you learning how to speak right now?
Great question. So clearly English.
Yes.
That's my native.
I'm not giving you credit for that one. You don't get credit for English.
But I also speak German. I had a wonderful time going to school in Germany for part of my educational career. So I also speak German, and I'm learning Spanish. Most of my team is Spanish. So my goal that my team has challenged me with is to conduct an entire leadership meeting all in Spanish. So I'm working towards that. It's a pretty aggressive goal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I find that learning a language when you're not a child anymore is very difficult because and I don't know the science behind it, but your brain is so in tuned with English in our case that you're almost thinking about every word in English and translating it versus I think when you're a kid, it just is more natural to form those synapses or whatever the science is behind it. So first of all, good for you for doing that.
Well, Matt, you totally nailed it. And here's what I tell a lot of our prospective students, commercial and retail. Nobody wants to learn a second language.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It is uncomfortable and it's awkward and we have to be vulnerable and admit we have mistakes and feel like I'm a 50-year-old man, but I feel like a 2-year-old boy, right? In the way I speak and, the sophistication. And it is a very difficult thing to do. And then we have the neuroscience around it. Nobody wants to learn the language, but we want to know a language.
Yeah.
Right. But I'll tell you what, there is no more rewarding feeling than when you start to, feel the results come in. Right. If you ever want to learn, if you've ever tried to learn Spanish and you've learned a few phrases and then you visited somewhere in Mexico and you use the phrase and then they start spouting back to you in Spanish, like, whoa, I only know a few phrases.
Yeah.
Like, well, you said that with the perfect accent. You're getting somewhere, and that's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Dos cerveza, por favor.
Exactly.
That's the one you need to know.
Donde el baño, right?
Yes, yeah. There you go. Yeah, those are the ones you need. On the personal side, you have a little bit of some music love in there as well, and some interesting hobbies as well.
Yeah, you know what? I love anything that's been a challenge. So I'm just trying to teach myself guitar, right? So, just downloading a bunch of apps and playing off tabs. And, I'm the type of guitar player that I love learning the riffs of all my favorite songs. And that is a really cool feeling too. And being able to learn that. I haven't had much interest in learning the entire song because I kind of get bored after I learned the hook of the song and I get to play the riff. Really cool at parties, that kind of stuff. And harmonica, believe it or not. I just love the sound of the harmonica. And one day I'm going to try and play harmonica and guitar all at the same time once I've learned both. So, that's what I do when I'm not working in Live Lingua and acquiring businesses and sitting around the couch, just kind of figuring out how I want to end my days.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
On the business acquisition side of things there, are you actively looking at acquisitions all the time? Like, let's say outside of your Live Lingua realm, are you looking for acquisitions all the time? What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, to be honest, right now all my acquisitions are focused strategically within the Live Lingua space.
Gotcha.
And if, before we acquire Live Lingua, 100%, always looking for what is the next business or asset I can acquire or purchase. That's actually how we landed with Live Lingua. We set that intention. All of a sudden, this opportunity bubbles up. It was never listed. The owners had never really had considered selling, but never really took it seriously. But then it came up as an opportunity, and then we jumped on it. So all my acquisitions right now over the last year and a half have been within the realm of Live Lingua. What are products, services, or businesses we can bolt on? That's where my acquisition efforts have been focused. However, to say that there's an acquisition potential outside of our space, I would definitely seriously consider it, but has to fit within my personal limitations and bandwidth. Because as an investor, I only have so much time and so much money to spread around. And if I go too thin, it doesn't make anything successful. So I have to be very, very careful on where we go and how we do it.
Yeah, and it sounds like, well, I think you mentioned it as well, but it sounds like you want that hands-on approach with the business, whether it's you might not be in the business on a day-to-day basis, but definitely from the advisory side. So there's only so much capacity to be able to help out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a big part of my investor goals and the space I play in, it's in that SMB space. And we think, the deal on the street type deals where, they're not quite big enough to get into market space deals, but that's kind of where I picked my niche in. So I work with a lot of Americans as well. Niche or niche, depending on where you hail from, is I love those small businesses that have a really good business, a model, they're profitable, they've got a good operations and fulfillment team. The one piece they're really missing to scale up is the marketing and growth side. So my acquisition targets are always, I like to be a little bit more involved than, say, most M&A activists, because I want to take them from low market into mid market into big market, and then be able to scale them that way. So I have more of a hands-on type M&A activist for sure.
Okay. Your early career, like you mentioned, started out at a Fortune 500 company, then stayed with the corporate model, but on the smaller scale there. I'm sure there's people sitting, listening to this right now going, well, shit, I'm kind of stuck in that same boat, and I don't want to do this either. What advice do you have for them?
Everybody's got to try something, right? So I was lucky in the way we executed. I just kind of cut all ties. I burned my boats, all bridges gone. And it's decided that overnight. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that for everybody. It worked out for me, but it could have gone very, very badly.
Yeah.
For most people, what I would suggest is, can you get your mindset right around entrepreneurship? Okay. If we're unhappy in our corporate 500 jobs or day to day, try something that, in addition to, I'm not saying a side hustle, because I really don't like the word side hustle. Because for something to work really, really well, you need to commit. But there's a certain time period where there's a safe space to go out and test.
Yeah.
And decide if you really want to do it. Because I would say anybody who's looking to maybe make the leap from corporate 9 to 5, that type of role, into entrepreneurship, I say think really, really hard. Because all we ever see, whether it's on Instagram and TikTok and podcasts, most entrepreneurs are only going to share the glory, and it's probably only about 10%.
Yeah.
Right. 90% of what we do sucks. Yeah. It's hard. It's difficult. It's uncomfortable. Even though we're established business, I have many, many sleepless nights worrying about, I got to pay my people. We have to make sure we're bringing enough cash flow. Customers, occasionally are unhappy. We have to solve those problems on top of just regular market conditions. So 90% of what we do is really, really tough. And given the trade-off, sometimes I'm not sure it's worth it. But I'll tell you what, that little 5 to 10%, man, that's heaven to me. And when we get those little nuggets, So try something difficult. If you can't commit all of your other waking hours outside of your 9 to 5 and do the difficult things and give up a lot of things that you would have to give up as a full-time entrepreneur, then maybe it's not right for you, because entrepreneurship is not right for anybody. Everybody. There's definitely a place for people to work for entrepreneurs or corporate 500, not to be the top of the board, but sometimes it's okay to be the right hand of the board too. So figure out where your space is, and then go out and find a ton of fulfillment doing that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, and it's actually a really good segue into where I was going next here. And I know I've said it before on the podcast here, like, being an entrepreneur sucks. Like, it sucks. And I think if you knew now what you know, if you knew that back then, most people wouldn't go into entrepreneurship, except we're all still crazy. So we still would, because like you said, it's at 5 or 10%. And one of the analogies that I use all the time is the iceberg. And it fits perfectly into your example there of the 10%, because 90% of an iceberg is below the water. You only see the top 10, and the top 10 looks sexy and fun and cool, but you don't see the blood, the sweat, the tears, the near bankruptcies, the sleepless nights of thinking about payroll, the HR issues, the legal battles. That you don't see all of that stuff behind that top 10%. Exactly. So having said that, what are some of the challenges that you faced? And you can stay high level generic, or you can dive in and give us some examples. What are some of those challenges that you faced being an entrepreneur and running these businesses or acquiring businesses?
Matt, with one big broad stroke, people, like dealing with people, is the greatest and most glorious thing. And it is also at the same time the worst thing about entrepreneurship. It's the one thing we can't predict and we can't control, is what other people are going to do. And, if I was to give an example, right, as good as we can treat employees, provide them as good an environment as possible, when they decided they no longer want to be a part of it, the way they exit can be a real heartbreaker, right? Everything from, like you said, it's okay, well, I thought we had a better relationship and a little bit more of a professional or even personal connection than we did, and they go and do something, and it personally hurts, because at the end of the day, I mean, we do business with people we know, like, and trust, and it feels like that gets broken. I know a lot of people say don't do business with friends or family. I haven't had some really successful relationships. Some of the businesses have broke down within those, but because their relationship was so strong, that's also the most glorious part, is when you can do that with people like, and trust. So they're both polar opposites around the same topic, and it's people. So, when those business relationships fail with people like, and trust, if it's the worst is they just leave and maybe you don't have that relationship anymore. Well, it sucks, but you can live with that. But sometimes they go really sideways. And sometimes those people decide that, well, this is now going to a legal matter, and it's going into courts, and both sides end up spending a ton of money to litigate on something that was probably just a communication mistake or a misunderstanding. And a misunderstanding is just simply unstated expectations that were not equal. And that's painful, and it's difficult to recover from. And probably the worst consequence of those types of failures, not the business failures, right? You didn't sell enough product and you folded the business, whatever happens to be, those I can live with.
That happens.
It does. But the part where I thought we were on solid ground, but we weren't. So I started to not trust my own judgment as a result. So that one failed relationship leads into me being maybe a little overly critical about future relationships, even though they're completely independent of each other and have nothing to do with each other. I start to mistrust my judgment. That's probably the worst feeling as an entrepreneur that I've ever experienced.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. The people are the best part, the most frustrating part. The reason you do it, the reason you don't want to do it, everything comes down to people. If you remove the people, it would be a lot easier, but a lot less rewarding at the same time.
That's true. It's almost impossible to remove the people, because this is not a ship we can sail ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can read any business book. They're always going to tell you need quality team if you're going to go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes: if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with people.
Yeah.
So we can never ever successfully remove people from the equation. So that's just part of what we deal with as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, definitely. This story just popped in my head because it literally
Yeah.
just happened yesterday. I got a text from a friend, and it was just of a picture of a business that we had started. Not with this friend, but I had done it with a few other partners quite a few years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And I replied back to them. I said, that was the most fun I've ever had in an unsuccessful business because the business did not go well. It did not go well. But it was with such a fun group of people and people that I had so much admiration and respect for, that I look back on that with, good memories, and not the negative memories that we probably should be thinking of it with. So
Yeah,
again, it
exactly.
goes back to the people side of things.
Yeah,
It's really
100%. That's a really cool story.
let's talk about your work life balance a little bit. And when you're involved, first of all, running an organization as the CEO, you have other responsibilities outside of that. How do you manage to make sure that you're making time for yourself, for your friends, your family, whatever that might look like?
Yeah, it took me a long time to get there, Matt. But the thing I do is I make sure I nail my morning routine, 100%. The other thing I'm still working on is nailing my end of night routine. But if I can start my day off the way I want to, that serves me best, that sets up everything else for success. So my day typically starts. I wake up around 3:30, and I've
Sorry,
never
what?
been.
Let,
Yeah, it's
let's just,
early. It's
okay,
early.
3:30. Okay.
3:30, and I kind of roll over. I'm not there. 3:30. All right, let's go. Jump out of bed. I'm like, oh my god, it's three
Yeah.
thirty in the morning. I kind of lay in bed, watch sports highlights for a couple of minutes, and by 4 o'clock, I'm out of bed and started my day. So my day always starts with, I call it the hymns. It's hydrates, right? Meditates, move my body, and I forget the last one, but it's so automatic now. But I
Yeah.
make sure that my morning routine. So I wake up, I get it when I get out of bed. First thing I do is I'm drinking a liter of water.
Yeah.
I start to get going. I make sure I get my butt to the gym, because if I wait to the end of the day, I guarantee you I will not go. So the gym is the first thing I do. I get my workout in. All my water for the day is pretty much drank at the gym. So anything I do throughout the day is in addition to. Then I come home and I have a really good breakfast. So lots of protein. Now, I don't like to cook in the morning, so I'm a supplement guy. So I make
Yeah.
sure I have a really good high protein shake, get that in me, read 10 pages out of a book, a nonfiction book. So very much, Andy Frizzell, 75 hard. Make sure I get some reading in, feed my brain, right? The mind feed. And then I'm ready to start my day. So I check emails. It's a habit, probably a bad one. Most people recommend don't doing emails in the first thing, but if I don't, I'm going to be thinking about it all day.
So
I
that's
don't.
important then, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It has to be, right. So if it's on my brain, I can't concentrate on it. I check them. I don't necessarily respond to them, so I check to make sure there's no fires and all that stuff. And then I start working my task list, and like most product production consultants would tell you, figure out your biggest thing, most important thing first. Something I'm still working on, right, is making sure that I'm moving something really important forward. So whether that's researching companies we're looking to acquire, what's marketing strategies we need to start implementing, tasking those out. If I can get that half of the day done like that, man, the rest of the day is a huge win. So,
Yeah.
but my morning routine is, no matter what happens, it's the same every single day, and not just Monday through Friday. Saturdays I'm up, Sundays I'm up. I make sure every day is the same, because I need to nail that morning routine to make sure everything else happens.
Wow. And why 3:30? Why, what was the choice behind that? Because that's not your body naturally saying that.
No, and in fact, if you talk to some of my old university roommates, they would tell you I'm not a morning person. I used to be the nightmare roommate, set my alarm for 6 and hit snooze every 9 minutes until 8:30 before I had to go to class. So I was the nightmare roommate. And anybody who's listening, I apologize to my roommates if you catch this. So thank you for your tolerance and patience. But the reason why 3:30, because I want to be in the gym by 4:30. By the time 5:30, 6 o'clock rolls around, the gym starts to get busy, equipment gets occupied. That, and if I don't get my actual day started by 8, I feel like I'm behind. I still have a very much 9 to 5 type body, because I think I could start working. I could be at my desk at 8, right? Or working by 9. I still have a 9 to 5 feeling in my body after years and years of indoctrination that hasn't gone away. So if I'm not at my desk at 9, so even though I might be doing something productive like being at the gym, if I'm at the gym at 8, I get super, super anxious that I got to get to my desk. I got to get working. And if I start at the gym late, I will probably skip the gym so that I can be at my desk working by 9. That's still a very much 9 to 5 feeling. So if I'm up at 3:30 in the gym by 4:30, I can get a full workout, guilt-free workout done by 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I still get my breakfast in, get all my reading, get all my prep work done, so I can be at my desk between 8 and 9.
Good for you. That's very, very impressive. I am not up at 3:30, so anybody that can do that, I applaud you definitely. What time do you typically try to go to bed then at night to get all that in?
My body forces me to be asleep by 8. Like, I could try and push it. Like, I'm not the entrepreneur who's going to be up till 2 in the morning banging stuff out. My body starts to say by 6, 7 o'clock, okay, we're getting ready to wind down. 8 o'clock, it doesn't matter where I'm at, I'm probably falling asleep. So it is offset by the time I go to bed as well. So I think it's all relative.
Yeah. Well, it is all relative. But it is much more difficult to push yourself to be up at 3:30 than to push yourself to be up at 7 and go to bed later, right?
That is true.
Yeah. Stacy, if somebody wanted to learn more about what you're doing, whether it's on the Live Lingua side or some of the other things that you've been working on, or if they want to connect with you, where would they be able to go for that?
2 places I would recommend, Matt. People can reach out to me directly on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is at the real Stacy Richter, StacyRichter, Instagram, or just hit me up on my website, stacyrichter.com. And I'd be happy to answer people's questions or network, whatever it happens to be. I'm pretty open book that way.
Awesome. Well, Stacy, certainly want to thank you for being on the show today. You had a lot of insight. You have the anti-Robert Kiyosaki upbringing into your professional life there. So I certainly appreciate the stories that you shared and all the insights.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I had so much fun today. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.